spiritual principle that breaks the cycle of emotional pain. As Carl Jung once said, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. This simple truth holds the key to breaking free from the emotional pain we carry through life. In today's video, the spiritual principle that breaks the cycle of emotional pain, we'll dive deep into the hidden root of suffering and how awareness and surrender can transform it. If you've ever felt trapped in repeating emotional patterns or wondered why certain pains keep resurfacing, this is for you. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. Let's explore how spiritual wisdom and inner understanding can bring true peace. Before we begin, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a breakthrough just by letting go? Share your story in the comments, and let's grow together on this path. 1. Suffering is created by inner resistance, not external events. Pain is inevitable. It comes with the experience of being alive. But suffering that deeper emotional turmoil we often carry for years is something we create ourselves. And we create it through resistance. When something painful happens, we instinctively respond with thoughts like, "This shouldn't be happening." That simple mental reaction becomes the seed of suffering. We replay events, question them, resist them. And the more we resist, the more we suffer. Carl Jung captured this beautifully with the words, "What you resist persists." It's a spiritual law, not just a psychological observation. Life will always include loss, change, and challenge. But how long we stay stuck in pain, that's up to us. Resistance doesn't protect us. It doesn't heal us. It only keeps the wound open, forcing us to relive what we desperately want to escape. So many people go through life trapped in cycles of emotional pain, unaware that they're the ones holding on to it. They think their suffering is caused by what happened, but in truth, it's caused by the refusal to accept what is. Acceptance does not mean we like or agree with what happened. It simply means we stop fighting it internally, and only then can healing begin. A woman I once knew lost her partner suddenly. In the beginning, her grief was raw and real. But as months passed, her sorrow evolved into something deeper, darker bitterness. She couldn't stop saying, "It's not fair. It shouldn't have happened." Her days revolved around what ifs and why nots. She was no longer mourning the loss. She was fighting reality. And that internal war exhausted her. Eventually, she joined a support group. And there, someone said something that changed her life. "You're not hurting from the loss anymore. You're hurting from the refusal to let go." That struck a nerve. Over time, she began to release her grip on the story. The pain remained, but the suffering eased. She stopped asking why and started asking how she could carry love forward, how she could rebuild. And she did. Carl Jung taught that true healing requires integration and the acceptance of all parts of our experience, including the ones we try to suppress. When we deny or resist certain emotions, they don't disappear. They go underground. They become shadows. And those shadows shape our behavior in unconscious ways. We lash out, withdraw, self-sabotage, not because of what happened, but because of what we refuse to feel fully and release. Modern life only adds to the problem. We're constantly encouraged to stay busy, to distract ourselves, to numb pain with consumption and performance. But nothing substitutes for facing our truth. If we don't pause to meet our own discomfort with compassion and awareness, we remain trapped in patterns that look like fate, but are actually self-made prisons. You may notice this in subtle ways. Replaying an argument over and over again, clinging to anger long after it serves any purpose, feeling stuck in regret about something that can't be changed. These are signs that resistance is quietly ruling your emotional world. And like Jung warned, what you continue to resist will continue to show up in your mind, your body, your relationships until you're ready to face it. Freedom doesn't come from changing the past. It comes from changing how we hold it. When we stop resisting, we create space. And in that space, something new can enter: understanding, peace, clarity. The pain may still be there, but it no longer controls you. It no longer defines you. True spiritual growth begins the moment you stop asking reality to be different than it is. That's when the cycle breaks. That's when suffering ends. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting what's already here. Have you ever noticed how your suffering grows when you mentally fight reality? If you've experienced this inner resistance and learned from it, share your story in the comments so others can find comfort and wisdom. If you're just beginning to recognize it, comment, "I'm ready to let go," so we can walk this path of healing together. 2. Radical acceptance is the key to emotional freedom. Radical acceptance doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It means you no longer allow it to steal your peace. You stop fighting reality not because you're weak, but because you're wise. This isn't surrender in the way the world sees it. This is spiritual wisdom. This is you choosing freedom over inner warfare. What you resist persists not as punishment, but as a reflection of the energy you continue to give it. The moment you drop the inner struggle, you begin to heal. And the truth is, most of our emotional pain doesn't come from the event itself, but from our refusal to accept that it happened. Acceptance isn't saying, "I'm okay with it." It's saying, "It happened, and I will no longer allow it to dominate my inner world." It's a reclaiming of power. When we stay in resistance, we leak energy. We replay scenarios. We argue with reality. We attach to outcomes that will never arrive. And all the while, our mind becomes the battlefield, one we keep revisiting, long after the war is over. But radical acceptance clears the fog. It doesn't erase the wound, but it stops us from picking at it until it bleeds again. It creates the space for real, grounded healing. There's a kind of quiet power in choosing to accept, not because you agree with the injustice, but because you refuse to let it live in you any longer. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." It's not a spiritual shortcut. It's the doorway to transformation. Emotional suffering lingers when we insist life should have been different. But spiritual wisdom teaches us that the present moment, even in its pain, is sacred. It invites us to soften, to breathe, to surrender, not in defeat, but in strength. Take Maya's story. She gave 10 years of her life to someone who walked away without warning. She didn't sleep. She obsessed over what she could have done differently. Her mind became a prison built on why and what if. But nothing changed until she whispered the words, "It's done." At that moment, she wasn't giving up. She was finally letting go. Letting go of the illusion that the past could be different. Letting go of the pain she kept alive by holding on. And that was the beginning of her return to peace. That's what acceptance does. It sets you free from the loop. You can still feel grief. You can cry. You can rage. But you don't let the pain define your future. You don't make it your identity. You become the observer, not the hostage. That's where your power is, in the pause. in the space between reaction and presence. When you accept what is, you reclaim all the energy you once used to resist. That energy becomes the fire that rebuilds your life. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped needing it to be. In spiritual wisdom, this is the shift. You no longer seek to bend reality to your will. You choose to stand in the middle of it with grace. The more you let go of control, the more you rise in peace. It's not that the pain didn't happen, it did. But you are no longer fueling it. You are no longer arguing with the storm. You are learning to dance in the rain without asking it to stop. Radical acceptance is not a one-time event. It's a way of living. And it breaks the cycle of emotional pain not through force, but through the silent power of choosing what's real. Comment below. I choose radical acceptance if you're ready to reclaim your peace and emotional freedom. 3. Your unconscious mind keeps repeating emotional pain. Most people unknowingly keep reliving the same emotional pain because their lives are being quietly directed by unconscious patterns formed in childhood. These aren't random reactions. They're emotional memories imprinted on the mind long before you ever had a choice. As Carl Jung wisely said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What you feel isn't always about the present moment. It's often a reflection of something unhealed within you. That familiar fear of abandonment, the anxiety that flares up when you get too close to someone, or the way you sabotage your own joy. When things are finally going well, these aren't flaws in your character. They're echoes from a time when your inner world was shaped by survival, not safety. Spiritual awakening begins when you stop seeing these patterns as just bad luck or who you are, and start asking deeper questions. Why does this reaction feel so familiar? Why do I always attract the same kind of pain? It's in these moments of honesty that you begin to uncover the root, not the surface behavior, but the wound beneath it. The child who never felt heard. The teenager who had to shrink themselves to feel loved. The adult who learned to expect rejection before connection. These hidden wounds are not meant to control you, but they will until you become conscious of them. When we talk about spiritual wisdom, we're not just talking about peace or enlightenment. We're talking about the raw, brave work of looking inward. It's choosing to sit with discomfort rather than numbing it. It's realizing that every emotional trigger is a mirror reflecting something you haven't yet healed. And when you react automatically, it's not because you're weak, it's because your nervous system still believes you're in the past. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. That's why you might flinch at love, overthink every conversation, or feel the need to prove your worth over and over again. These aren't personal failures. They're signs that your inner child is still trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. The turning point comes when you stop fighting these patterns and start listening to them. When you stop saying, "What's wrong with me?" and instead ask, "What is this pain trying to show me?" This shift is where true healing begins. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer inside it, you're above it. You can begin to rewire your beliefs, to treat yourself with the tenderness you always needed, to speak to your fear with compassion instead of shame. And slowly, the energy begins to shift. You're no longer reacting, you're responding. You're no longer surviving, you're choosing. This is the essence of spiritual awakening, the ability to walk through the fire of your own story and emerge with awareness instead of resentment. To no longer call your pain destiny, but a doorway. And through that doorway, you begin to meet the real you, the one beneath the fear, the defenses, the patterns. Not the version shaped by trauma, but the soul untouched by it. The one that's been waiting for you to remember. You were never broken, only buried. If this message helped you see your patterns more clearly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's awaken the unconscious together. 4. Emotional patterns are based on early conditioning. If you grew up believing that love always came with pain, silence, or being left behind, your adult relationships will often echo those same wounds. This isn't just coincidence, it's programming. The emotional patterns you're trapped in are not a reflection of your worth, but of your early conditioning. When love was inconsistent, when affection was earned rather than freely given, your nervous system learned to associate chaos with care. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What feels like heartbreak or rejection today is often your inner child reenacting an unresolved story, begging you to finally choose differently. Your mind craves familiarity, even if it hurts. That's why many people are magnetically pulled toward emotionally distant partners, unstable relationships, or even cycles of abandonment, not because they want to suffer, but because deep down, it feels like home. And until you realize this, you'll keep repeating the same emotional script, hoping for a new ending from the same beginning. Think of someone who was always chasing a parent's attention growing up. In adulthood, they might find themselves trying to win over people who treat them like an option, not a priority. When they're ignored, it feels painful, but strangely familiar. When someone is kind and present, it feels boring or even suspicious. This is not love. It's the trauma bond disguised as passion. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom teaches that transformation begins with awareness. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. When you bring light to the patterns you've inherited, you stop being a victim of your past and start becoming the author of your future. It's not about blaming your parents or your childhood. It's about understanding why you keep ending up in relationships that wound the same part of you over and over again. That awareness is the key to breaking the cycle of emotional pain. And once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it with a new choice, one rooted not in fear, but in self-worth. Take Alex, for example. On the outside, he seems like he has it all: successful career, emotional depth, and genuine kindness. But every time someone gets too close, he finds a reason to back away. His partners feel confused. They don't know that behind his emotional withdrawal is a boy who learned long ago that closeness leads to punishment. As a child, the more he opened his heart, the more he was met with coldness. So now, as an adult, vulnerability feels like danger. But when Alex starts doing the inner work therapy, journaling, and reflection, he begins to see the root of his fear. He stops blaming his partners and starts understanding himself. Little by little, he begins to stay present through discomfort, choosing connection even when it scares him. And with every conscious choice, a new neural pathway is formed. That's how healing happens, not through force, but through repetition and awareness. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the journey of becoming whole. Healing emotional pain isn't about escaping the past. It's about re-entering it with new eyes. It's about meeting the wounded parts of yourself with compassion instead of shame, and choosing partners, friendships, and environments that reflect your healed identity, not your unhealed patterns. Pain, then, becomes a teacher, not a life sentence. The emotional triggers you experience are not there to destroy you. They're there to reveal what still needs your attention. Every time you feel that familiar ache, instead of running or blaming, you pause, you breathe, you ask, "Where have I felt this before?" And just like that, the unconscious becomes conscious. Are you ready to break free from old emotional patterns and create something healthier? Comment below. I choose healing if you're ready to rewrite the story your past tried to teach you. 5. The ego strengthens suffering by clinging to identity and control. The ego doesn't just experience pain, it identifies with it. It feeds off it, turning wounds into identity and survival into performance. It says, "I am the one who was betrayed. I'm the one no one understands. I've always been the victim." And the more you repeat these lines, the more you become them. This is the illusion that keeps suffering alive. Because the truth is, pain is inevitable, but suffering that prolonged inner resistance to what has already happened is a product of the ego's desperate attempt to stay in control. Spiritual wisdom reminds us that healing begins where identification ends. As long as you are fused with the ego's voice, real healing cannot occur. The ego resists healing not because it enjoys pain, but because pain gives it form. If you suddenly drop your story, the ego fears it will disappear. So it tightens its grip. It tells you not to forgive because forgiveness means you were weak. It tells you not to let go because letting go means you were wrong. But none of that is true. The truth is, every time you step back and witness the voice inside you, you create space between you and the illusion. That space is power. Carl Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." The ego resists because resistance keeps the cycle of emotional pain turning. When you argue with what was, relive the injustice, replay the betrayal, you're not healing, you're reinforcing. It's like picking at a wound and wondering why it never closes. The ego keeps you trapped in the loop, convinced that replaying the past will somehow redeem it. But replaying is not healing. Presence is. You can't heal what you're still trying to control. That's the paradox. The more you try to manage pain by suppressing it, avoiding it, or rationalizing it, the more deeply it buries itself in your nervous system. Spiritual wisdom shows us another way. Instead of control, it invites surrender, not as weakness, but as strength. Not as giving up, but as finally stepping into the truth that you were never meant to carry the weight of the world by yourself. Think of someone who's gone through heartbreak. The ego says, "If I trust again, I'll be hurt again." So they close off. They become hyper-vigilant, guarded, skeptical of love. It seems wise, but it's actually fear disguised as intelligence. This person isn't protecting themselves. They're building a cage around their heart. And the longer they stay inside that cage, the more convinced they become that love is dangerous. But the danger isn't love. It's the ego's distorted response to pain. The only way out is through awareness. When you notice the ego's voice, the sarcasm, the defensiveness, the quiet resentment, you begin to reclaim your energy. You start realizing, this voice isn't me. This story isn't true. That's when healing begins. not in some grand spiritual awakening moment, but in the small, consistent choice to stop believing every thought that passes through your mind, to witness your internal reactions without becoming them. That's how you transcend the cycle. Every story the ego tells is an attempt to create certainty, but life is not here to be controlled. It's here to be experienced. And experience requires openness, softness, and a willingness to be changed. Spiritual wisdom is not about never feeling pain again. It's about no longer turning that pain into identity. It's about living in such deep truth that even when life stings, you don't close, you expand. The more you return to presence, the more the ego's grip weakens. The quieter the inner narrative becomes, the louder your soul speaks. You are not your wounds. You are not your defense mechanisms. You are not the stories you were forced to create to survive. You are the awareness underneath them all, waiting for the moment when you finally decide to come home to yourself. If you're ready to let go of the ego's illusions and embrace true healing, don't forget to subscribe for more insights on breaking free from suffering and reclaiming your inner peace. 6. Avoiding or suppressing pain only makes it worse. Avoiding or suppressing pain doesn't make it disappear. It only forces it deeper into the psyche, where it festers and transforms into anxiety, emotional detachment, or sudden outbursts that seem disproportionate to the moment. Repressed pain doesn't die. It hides in the body, in the nervous system, in the subconscious, and it controls us from the shadows. As Carl Jung so powerfully said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not just a psychological truth, it is a profound spiritual awakening. Pain that isn't processed will become the silent architect of your suffering, influencing your decisions, your relationships, your moods, and your sense of self-worth. Most people think healing means returning to a version of themselves that isn't broken. But true healing demands something far more radical. It calls us to feel, fully and without judgment. This means allowing the grief to surface, letting the tears fall, sitting with the ache instead of distracting ourselves with work, entertainment, or perfectionism. It means not labeling sadness as weakness, not shaming yourself for anger, and not turning pain into a silent punishment. Feeling is not a flaw in your design. It's the sacred doorway to becoming whole. Every time you suppress your emotions, you deepen the divide between your true self and your outer performance. And the longer that split goes unresolved, the more disconnected and numb you feel, even in the presence of love, beauty, or success. Spiritual wisdom teaches that emotional pain is not a curse, it is an invitation. An invitation to come home to yourself, to stop running, to listen, to witness, to hold yourself in the same compassion you so easily extend to others. You don't need to fix your feelings. You need to feel them, fully, consciously, and with tenderness. You will never outthink your pain. You must outpresence it. This means allowing it to move through you instead of fighting it. Because what you resist truly does persist, but what you accept transforms. Pain that is seen dissolves. Emotion that is honored evolves into strength. The body keeps score. The soul remembers what the mind tries to forget. But when you stop abandoning yourself in moments of pain, when you finally give yourself permission to feel what you've buried for years, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The emotional charge starts to fade. The trigger loses its power. The nervous system calms. And in that stillness, your inner wisdom begins to rise. As Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." That wound, if honored, becomes your initiation, not into weakness, but into your full power. You begin to realize that spiritual awakening isn't always about peace or bliss. Sometimes it's about finally hearing your own scream and choosing not to silence it. Sometimes it's about touching the rawest parts of your soul and still choosing to love yourself anyway. This is not the easy path, but it is the path to liberation. Do you feel this truth in your heart? If so, declare it in the comments. I choose to feel, not suppress. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more healing wisdom on your journey to wholeness. 7. Pain is temporary and impermanent. Pain does not last forever. But what makes it feel endless is the story we attach to it. The moment something hurts, a breakup, a betrayal, a rejection, our mind doesn't just feel the pain, it builds a narrative around it. This always happens to me. I'm not worthy of love. People can't be trusted. And the more you repeat that story, the more rooted your suffering becomes. Pain, by its nature, is fleeting. But the story, if left unchecked, can live on for years, even decades. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." When you resist pain by trying to explain it away or justify it through mental storytelling, you are feeding it with your energy. And whatever you feed grows. There's a moment in everyone's life when pain knocks the wind out of you. Maybe it was when someone walked out of your life unexpectedly. Maybe it was when you gave your all to something or someone, only to be left empty-handed. In that silence, your mind desperately tries to make sense of what happened. But instead of peace, it often crafts a narrative of blame, guilt, or shame. You replay conversations, analyze text messages, relive the moment over and over again. That is not healing. That is emotional self-sabotage disguised as reflection. And yet, you stay in that loop because it gives you a false sense of control. But spiritual wisdom teaches that real control isn't about changing what happens. It's about changing how you respond to it. I once knew a man who was abandoned by his father as a child. He carried that wound well into adulthood, sabotaging relationships, pushing people away before they could leave him. He wasn't responding to the present moment. He was reacting to an old story he never stopped feeding. One day, after yet another breakup, he finally saw the pattern. He said, "I realized I wasn't afraid of love. I was afraid of being left again." That realization didn't erase the past, but it opened the door to healing. Because the moment you stop identifying with the pain, the moment you stop replaying the narrative, you begin to see your own power clearly. Not the power to rewrite the past, but the power to stop letting it define your present. Carl Jung believed that healing requires consciousness. You cannot heal what you're unwilling to face. And facing your pain means recognizing the story you've told yourself about it. Is it true? Or is it just familiar? Many people unconsciously choose suffering over healing because suffering is predictable. Healing requires the courage to let go, not just of the event, but of your role in it. You must stop being the victim in the story and start being the observer. From that place, something beautiful happens. Clarity emerges, and with clarity comes peace. Pain may knock on your door, but you don't have to invite it to stay. When you stop giving energy to the story, pain loses its power. You begin to feel spacious again, present, alive. That's what a spiritual awakening looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the absence of resistance. you realize that your worth was never tied to what happened. It was always found in how you rise after the fall. And the most powerful rise begins with one quiet, radical decision: to stop feeding the story. If this message resonates with you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more wisdom like this. And comment below: I release the story, I choose peace. 8. Pain is a catalyst for transformation and growth. Pain is not your enemy, it's your turning point. Carl Jung understood that suffering wasn't a punishment to be feared, but a spiritual initiation meant to wake you up. Through conscious awareness, emotional pain can be alchemized into strength, purpose, and spiritual wisdom. The moment you stop resisting and start feeling, you begin to transform. Pain strips away illusion, burns off ego, and confronts you with parts of yourself you've long ignored. It exposes where you've been lying to yourself, where you've been asleep, and where your soul is calling for more. It isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to carve you open so that something deeper, wiser, and more authentic can take root. When we numb pain, we delay growth. When we deny pain, we deepen our wounds. But when we sit with pain, breathe through it, and ask it what it's here to teach us, that's when the shift begins. The truth is, many people spend their lives looping through the same emotional patterns, never realizing that their suffering persists because they're avoiding the inner work. Jung's powerful insight: what you resist persists is not just a clever phrase, it's a spiritual law. The more you push pain away, the more tightly it clings to you. But when you open the door to it with awareness, it begins to soften, shift, and eventually dissolve. And in its place, something stronger and clearer emerges. Think of the man who feels lost after the collapse of his marriage. At first, he drowns in shame, regret, and confusion. But instead of distracting himself with noise or running toward the next relationship, he chooses solitude. He reflects, he journals, he faces the pain. And in that quiet space, he sees for the first time how his need for control and his fear of vulnerability sabotaged his connection. This insight, born of deep emotional discomfort, doesn't just heal his wounds, it reshapes his soul. That is the essence of spiritual awakening. It's not a lightning bolt from the sky. It's a steady unfolding, often beginning with your most painful moment. Pain carries a sacred message. Something within you is no longer aligned. Something is calling for attention, healing, and change. And if you answer that call with openness instead of resistance, you become someone new, not overnight, but moment by moment. You begin to access your inner strength, your clarity, and your quiet power. This process is not glamorous. It's raw, humbling, and deeply human. But what emerges is a version of you that is no longer shaped by trauma, fear, or false identity, but by truth. And that truth is where your spiritual wisdom lives. You don't gain wisdom by reading about pain. You gain it by walking through it consciously. You earn it through every sleepless night, every tear, every honest conversation you have with yourself. And the more honest you are, the more free you become. This is why your suffering matters. Not because it defines you, but because it refines you. The more you let it teach you, the more it transforms into sacred knowledge, something that no one can take away from you. That's the gift. That's the initiation. That's the path of becoming whole. If this message touched your soul, leave a comment of faith. I believe pain is guiding me to my purpose. I trust in the transformation it brings. 9. The path to healing is personal responsibility and conscious choice. No one is coming to save you, and that is not a tragedy. It is the beginning of your liberation. The power to transform your life has always been in your hands. When you finally stop waiting for someone else to fix what's broken inside of you and instead turn inward with full presence, you begin to remember your own strength. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." That moment of turning inward is the birth of spiritual awakening. It's not about escaping the pain, but about understanding that the pain itself carries sacred instructions. The suffering we experience isn't just the result of what happened. It's the result of our resistance to it, our inner war against what is. That resistance keeps us bound, looping through emotional pain that never gets resolved. But the instant you stop fighting your emotions and start listening to them, you begin to heal. Not because the situation has changed, but because you have. You've moved out of victimhood and into presence. Spiritual awakening is not about feeling good all the time. It's about becoming deeply honest with yourself. It's about choosing to grow, even when it's uncomfortable. True power doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from taking radical responsibility for how you meet it. You stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" And you begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift changes everything. It's where inner freedom begins. When you stop blaming others, when you stop needing apologies, when you stop waiting for someone to treat you better in order to feel worthy, that's when you reclaim your life. You become your own source of validation. You become the one who nurtures the parts of you that were neglected, overlooked, or misunderstood. You meet yourself with truth and compassion, and in doing so, you become unshakable. This is not just emotional maturity, it is spiritual mastery. It is the moment you stop outsourcing your healing and start living from a place of grounded self-trust. The deeper your acceptance, the deeper your transformation. Spiritual awakening is raw. It asks you to face what you've buried. It asks you to break the patterns you inherited. It asks you to sit with your pain long enough for it to reveal its message. And in that stillness, you realize the pain was never the enemy. The real prison was your resistance to feeling it. When you surrender to what is, you make space for what can be. As Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Your healing begins not when life gets easier, but when you choose to rise regardless. When you embrace the discomfort, hold yourself through the darkness, and walk forward with clarity, that is when you embody your power. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've chosen to stop running from your truth. This is where spiritual awakening begins and where the cycle of emotional pain finally ends. To affirm your commitment to healing and personal power, declare it in the comments. I choose growth over blame. Your words may inspire someone else to take responsibility for their life too. So as we reflect on Carl Jung's timeless wisdom, remember this: emotional pain doesn't have to define your life. What you resist truly does persist, but what you accept, you can finally release. Healing begins the moment you stop fighting your experience and start understanding it. If this message touched you or opened your heart in any way, help us spread the light by giving this video a like, sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribing to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights that nourish the soul. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. Until next time, keep growing, keep awakening, and stay aligned with your inner truth. The Kybalion hides the laws that control reality. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Zen proverb. This ancient truth perfectly reflects the hidden power of the Kybalion, a book that reveals the invisible laws silently shaping our lives, thoughts, and reality itself. These principles aren't just mystical ideas. They are tools for transformation. If you've ever felt like there's more to life than what you've been told, then maybe, just maybe, you're ready to see what most people miss. As you watch, ask yourself, how would your life change if you truly understood how reality works beneath the surface? Comment below with your thoughts, and let's explore these sacred truths together. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where ancient knowledge meets your personal awakening. 1. Everything is mind. The world you see isn't what it appears to be. What seems solid, fixed, and external is, at its core, a projection of something far more subtle, your mind. According to Hermetic wisdom, everything is mind. The entire universe is mental. This isn't a metaphor, it's a law. Reality itself begins not in atoms or matter, but in thought. What you feel, what you experience, what shows up in your life, all stem from your inner world, vibrating and unfolding as your personal reality. Your mind is not just a quiet observer sitting in the background. It is the source, the generator, the architect of everything. Every circumstance you face, every emotion you carry, every person you meet is connected to the vibration of your thoughts. You are not just moving through life, you are projecting it outward like a movie from the reel of your subconscious. Change the film, and you change the story. Alter your thoughts, and the entire screen of reality responds. This is the power hidden in plain sight. Most people think they're reacting to life when they're actually responding to the echo of their own beliefs. A chaotic mind manifests a chaotic world. A mind filled with fear attracts more reasons to fear. But a mind that is centered, aware, and aligned with truth begins to see clarity, peace, and synchronicity unfold. The mirror of reality never lies. It only reflects. Trying to fix the world while ignoring the mind is like wiping a mirror, hoping it changes your face. It doesn't work. The outer is simply the consequence of the inner. The Kybalion reminds us, the all is mind, the universe is mental. This is not a theory. It is the blueprint beneath all things. And when you understand it, you realize you are never truly stuck. The key to change isn't outside of you. It's always been within. Energy follows thought. Attention brings manifestation. The clearer and more intentional your inner world becomes, the more harmonious your outer world reflects it. You begin to attract relationships that mirror your growth, opportunities that match your frequency, and peace that doesn't depend on conditions. You stop waiting and start creating consciously, powerfully, and in alignment with the laws that govern the invisible. To master this law is to reclaim the authorship of your life. It doesn't require force, it requires awareness. You don't need to fight the shadows outside. You simply turn on the light within. And when your inner vibration shifts, the universe has no choice but to follow. Because everything is mind, and the mind is where all true power begins. If you're ready to take full responsibility for your reality and harness the true power of your mind, comment below, "I create my reality." And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Your journey to conscious creation starts here. 2. The universe operates by invisible laws. Life isn't random. Everything you experience, your thoughts, emotions, circumstances unfolds according to 7 hermetic laws: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. These principles are not abstract theories. They are the invisible architecture of the universe. They operate on every level: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Whether or not you're conscious of them, they shape your reality every second of the day. The law of mentalism reveals that all is mind. Reality begins in thought. Everything you see around you was once an idea. The house you live in, the phone you use, even the life you're living at all started in the realm of mind. What you hold in your inner world, you project onto the outer world. If your thoughts are clouded by fear, lack, or self-doubt, your reality will echo those frequencies. But if you discipline your mind to dwell in clarity, truth, and intention, your life begins to shift in extraordinary ways. The law of correspondence teaches that the patterns in your inner world are mirrored in your outer world. As within, so without. When you're overwhelmed, anxious, or disconnected inside, your external life becomes chaotic, disordered, and full of friction. But when you center yourself through reflection, healing, or meditation, you begin to notice your environment responding to that harmony. The way people speak to you changes. Opportunities begin to open. Life becomes less of a struggle and more of a flow. The law of vibration reminds you that everything is energy. Nothing is still. Every object, every emotion, every thought vibrates at a specific frequency. Gratitude, love, joy. These emotions vibrate higher than fear, shame, or guilt. When you live in a low vibrational state, you attract more of the same. Raise your frequency, and you begin to magnetize people, experiences, and outcomes that reflect your elevated state. Polarity is the principle that everything has its opposite: light and darkness, peace and chaos, love and hate. They're not separate, but rather different degrees of the same thing. By understanding this, you stop labeling experiences as good or bad. Instead, you begin to transmute one into the other. You realize that heartbreak contains the seed of transformation, that fear can be turned into fuel. This is how you reclaim your power, not by resisting polarity, but by learning to work with it. The law of rhythm reveals that life moves in cycles. Just like the tides rise and fall, your energy, emotions, and circumstances follow patterns. There will be seasons of growth and seasons of stillness, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. But rhythm teaches you that no phase is permanent. You learn to trust the wave. You learn that downturns are not punishments, but setups for your next rise. Cause and effect states that nothing happens without a cause. Your current reality is the result of previous thoughts, decisions, and actions. There are no coincidences, only consequences. If you want to shift your life, you must shift your input. That means taking responsibility for what you think, say, do, and allow. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What am I creating?" The law of gender says that everything has both masculine and feminine principles. This isn't about gender roles. It's about the creative forces within you. The masculine initiates, directs, and acts. The feminine receives, nurtures, and brings forth. True balance comes when these energies work together. You stop chasing everything, and instead, you learn when to act and when to allow, when to speak, and when to listen. These 7 laws are not ancient relics. They are the keys to a conscious life. When you align with them, you stop living by chance and start living by choice. Your mind becomes the architect, your emotions become signals, and your reality becomes a reflection of your inner mastery. This is how you break free, not by changing the world outside you, but by transforming the world within you. Are you ready to align with the hidden laws that shape your reality? If so, comment below. I live by universal law, to declare your commitment to conscious transformation. 3. Your inner world creates your outer world. What you think, feel, and believe doesn't stay locked inside you. It becomes the very frequency you radiate. And that frequency acts like a magnet, pulling toward you people, situations, and outcomes that match it. This is not fantasy. This is law. The Hermetic principle of correspondence teaches, as within, so without. Your inner world is not separate from your outer world. It is the blueprint. Every emotion you carry sends out a vibration. Gratitude hums at a high frequency, drawing in peace, abundance, and joy. Fear, resentment, and anxiety operate at a lower frequency, attracting delay, conflict, and limitation. Nothing in your life is random. Everything is vibrating your thoughts, your words, your beliefs, and each vibration becomes a cause that sets unseen forces into motion. This is where the law of cause and effect comes alive. Everything that appears in your life is the fruit of seeds planted sometimes recently, sometimes long ago. That moment you said, "I'll never be good enough," that quiet belief that love always leaves, that repeated inner voice saying money is hard, those thoughts are not just passing clouds, they are commands, and reality, as if obeying a silent script, begins to reflect them back. You may not see the link right away. A thought today might ripple into an event months later, but cause and effect is never broken. The universe is listening more to your energy than your words. So if your mouth says, "I want success," but your energy says, "I'm afraid of failure," you'll attract more delay than triumph. Cycles repeat because energy repeats, and energy repeats because thoughts are recycled. Unconscious fears, left unexamined, become self-fulfilling prophecies. Old beliefs become patterns. Patterns become identity, and identity becomes destiny unless interrupted. The interruption begins with awareness. When you become the observer of your mind instead of its prisoner, you regain choice. You can choose what you dwell on. You can elevate what you feel. You can plant new thoughts, ones that carry frequencies of expansion, courage, and love. And those frequencies will call back experiences aligned with them. You don't need to fix the outer world. You need to tune your inner one. If reality is a mirror, then your life isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. The seeds are in your hands. And the moment you change what you sow, what you reap must follow. Do you believe your inner world shapes your outer reality? If you do, declare it boldly in the comments. I align my thoughts with truth and power. Let the universe know you're ready to shift from within. 4. You are not your mind. You are the conscious observer. You are not your fears, your doubts, or the endless stream of thoughts racing through your head. You are not the internal monologue that criticizes, judges, compares, and worries. You are the one who sees all of this happening. You are the conscious observer, still awareness behind the noise. The moment you begin to recognize this is the moment you take your first step toward true power. You move from being trapped in unconscious reaction to consciously responding to life, from letting reality happen to you to shaping it from within. This is the foundation of all spiritual mastery. And it's the message buried deep within the Kybalion, a book that whispers the secret laws that control reality to those ready to listen. The Kybalion teaches that the all is mind. This means that everything you experience originates in consciousness. Your mind is not just a receiver of life, it is the projector. The world around you is a mirror reflecting the dominant frequency of your thoughts. Yet most people live in autopilot, believing every anxious thought, every limiting belief, as if it were the truth. They don't realize that their suffering isn't caused by external events, but by how their minds interpret those events. When you stop identifying with your mind and begin observing it, you unlock the power to shift your frequency and rewrite your experience of reality. This is not an abstract idea. It's a practical shift. Think of your thoughts as clouds passing through the sky. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. When a thought arises, "I'm not good enough. This will never work. They don't love me," you don't have to believe it. You can pause, watch, and choose something higher. That space between the thought and your reaction is where transformation begins. It's the moment you go from being programmed to being present. The Hermetic laws, hidden in the Kybalion, remind us that the universe responds not to what we say, but to the vibration we carry. The law of vibration teaches that everything moves, everything vibrates, and the frequency you hold attracts experiences that match it. If your mind is spinning in fear and lack, that is what your life will reflect. But when you rise above those frequencies, when you observe your thoughts without becoming them, you begin to vibrate from a higher state: clarity, peace, and inner power. Mastery begins when you stop running from your mind and start mastering it. You realize that your thoughts are tools, not truths. They are patterns shaped by memory, culture, and past pain, but they are not you. The Kybalion says, to change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. This is more than just positive thinking. It's vibrational alignment. You start to choose the inner state you want to live from, rather than being dragged around by the chaos of untrained thoughts. The world doesn't need more people on autopilot. It needs awakened observers. People who can rise above the storm of the mind and consciously shape their lives from a place of awareness. You are that person. Not because of anything external, but because the moment you witness your mind instead of merging with it, you become sovereign. And in that sovereignty, everything changes. Stay connected to your true self by subscribing to our channel. Here, we explore the power of conscious awareness and support each other in breaking free from mental patterns. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer, capable of choosing peace, clarity, and purpose. 5. Life moves in rhythmic cycles. Progress isn't a straight road. It moves like a wave, rising and falling, always in motion. The Kybalion teaches us through the law of rhythm that everything in existence follows cycles, up and down, inward and outward, expansion and contraction. Just like tides return to the shore, and just like seasons revolve from spring to winter and back again, your life also flows through predictable, energetic patterns. What you once saw as failure or repetition is actually part of a sacred spiral, a return not to the same place, but to a higher version of it. You don't face old wounds because you've regressed. You face them because now you are stronger. You're prepared to meet them with more wisdom, more maturity, more presence. Everything flows, out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall, the Kybalion reminds us. This isn't just a quote from an old mystical text. It's a mirror reflecting your own journey. When things fall apart, when your energy dips, or your emotions resurface, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means the pendulum has swung, and it will swing back. Understanding this law allows you to stop panicking in the low moments and stop clinging in the high ones. You begin to trust the process, to respect the timing, to know that the low is not a punishment, it's preparation. It's part of the rhythm of expansion. Think of someone who worked hard to overcome anxiety therapy, meditation, personal growth, and finally felt free. Then one day, without warning, the anxiety returns. Most people would see this as failure, but if they understood the law of rhythm, they'd see it as a revisit with purpose. This new wave isn't here to destroy progress. It's here to test it, to deepen it, to strengthen roots that were already planted. The universe doesn't send us backward. It brings us inward. Every return is an invitation to heal at a higher octave. When you realize that rhythm governs your emotions, your relationships, even your opportunities, you stop trying to force linear progress. You begin to align with a deeper intelligence that already knows when to pull and when to release. You learn to move with grace, to rest without guilt, to rise without arrogance. The low points become sacred pauses. The highs become humble gifts. Nothing is wasted. Everything is part of the spiral that lifts you closer to your higher self. You don't grow by avoiding the cycles. You grow by mastering your presence inside them. Let go of the need to constantly climb. Instead, trust the wave. Let the rhythm teach you. Let the spiral carry you. Because once you do, you stop surviving life, you start flowing with it. If this message resonates with your soul, leave a comment of trust. I embrace the rhythm of life. I am growing through every season. Let this be your declaration as you rise, again and again, with greater wisdom each time. 6. Transformation is inner alchemy. You are not meant to destroy fear, sadness, or anger. These emotions are not enemies. They are energy, and energy doesn't die. It transforms. This is the art of inner alchemy, the sacred science of transmutation taught in Hermetic wisdom. When you feel anger, you're not supposed to suppress it or explode with it. Instead, you shift it. That energy, when elevated, becomes courage. Fear, when lifted to a higher frequency, becomes grounded presence. Sadness, when seen through the eyes of truth, becomes insight. This is not fantasy. This is vibration at work. Everything vibrates. Nothing is still. And when you understand this, you no longer need to fight your emotions. You simply change their frequency. Polarity tells us that opposites are the same in nature, only different in degree. Fear and faith are not enemies. They are ends of the same pole. The same is true for sadness and wisdom, for anger and strength, for doubt and clarity. Every negative state has a positive twin waiting to be revealed. You move between them not through force, but through awareness. The Kybalion says, to change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. You're not broken. You're just vibrating at a certain level. And vibration can always be raised. When a storm rises inside you, instead of trying to silence it, feel into it and listen. Ask what this emotion is trying to show you. Emotions are messengers, not problems. They carry encoded wisdom, and when you honor them, they evolve. This is the silent miracle of inner alchemy, turning emotional lead into spiritual gold. You begin to realize that transformation isn't about escaping your darkness. It's about holding your darkness in so much light that it melts into truth. This is why the Hermetic path is not about denial or suppression. It's about mastery. You become the alchemist of your own reality, the one who knows how to turn inner chaos into inner clarity. This is the secret hidden behind the ancient words. The laws that control reality don't exist outside of you. They operate within your thoughts, your choices, your emotional vibrations. So you don't need to wait for a new life. You don't need a miracle to come from outside. The miracle is already inside you, waiting to be activated through alignment with these laws. Once you understand that your inner state creates your outer experience, you stop being a victim of circumstance and become a creator of reality. And that's the power the world never taught you, because almost no one is ready for it. But now, you are. To affirm your commitment to the path of inner alchemy, declare your transformation. Comment below, "I choose to transmute my energy," and let others be inspired by your journey of conscious elevation. 7. Real power comes from alignment, not control. You don't control the universe, you align with it. This is the foundation of all true power. The more you try to force, the more resistance you create. But the moment you let go of control and begin to harmonize with the natural rhythm of life, you enter into a state of alignment. Life is not a random series of events. It is a symbolic, intelligent dance filled with messages, mirrors, and meaning. Every moment carries guidance, and the universe is always speaking to those who have the awareness to listen. Living as an initiate means becoming fluent in this language. You stop reacting blindly, and instead, you start seeing the deeper patterns at play. When you begin aligning with the universal laws, synchronicity becomes normal. Doors open, people show up, ideas arrive with precision. You no longer chase life, it meets you where you are. That's not magic, that's alignment. The Kybalion teaches that, as above, so below, as within, so without. This isn't philosophy, it's mechanics. The outer world is a reflection of your inner state. You cannot create peace externally while hosting chaos internally. True transformation starts with vibrational alignment, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are in harmony with truth, clarity, and purpose. The law of rhythm reminds us that everything flows. There are tides, seasons, and cycles in all things. You don't escape the low moments, but you stop fearing them. You realize the dip is part of the rise. The initiate knows that energy moves in waves, and instead of resisting the downswings, they learn to rest, reflect, and prepare for the return of momentum. This is where personal power matures not in domination, but in awareness. Not in forcing, but in trusting. Trying to control reality is like trying to sculpt the ocean with your bare hands. It slips away the harder you press. But when you align with universal laws, you begin to move with grace. Even modern science echoes this truth. Everything is energy. Frequency is reality. And frequency is shaped by your state of being, your emotions, your focus, your presence. That's why the universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are. That's why control fails and alignment succeeds. You become magnetic, not by pushing, but by resonating. There comes a point when you realize that the universe isn't against you. It's waiting for you to attune to its rhythm. The initiate doesn't demand, they observe. They decode the signs. They respond with intention. They walk in sync with the deeper order. This is where real power lives, not in manipulation, but in knowing. not in domination, but in attunement, not in force, but in flow. If you're ready to stop forcing and start flowing, type in the comments, "I align with the universe." Let this be your declaration of inner power and harmony. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the hidden wisdom of the Kybalion, a book that doesn't just inform, but transforms. The laws it reveals aren't just theories. They are forces shaping your everyday reality, whether you recognize them or not. As you reflect on what you've heard, ask yourself, what unseen laws have been guiding your life? And more importantly, how will you begin to align with them consciously? If this awakens something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone ready to see beyond the surface, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more truth that empowers the soul. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next, because reality only changes when you do.